Hey guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. It's Michaela here. Last week I said I was going to do some steady fanfiction content this week, and I am going to do that. Normally here we talk about books, but if you didn't know, a lot of my personal reading in the last several years has been specifically focused around Steve Harrington and Eddie Munson in the Stranger Things fandom, like to the point of the equivalent of over 100 books a year worth of fanfiction cumulatively having been read by me every single year. So, because such a large portion of my reading is in fandom, I'm going to talk about it here on the channel. I recently made the move over to Blue Sky, and the steady fandom over there is actually like super top tier, super fun to be over there talking to everyone. So if you are a fan of steady and you aren't on Blue Sky, highly recommend coming over. Be friends with me. Be friends with everybody else over there. But one of the things that happened recently was that somebody made a bingo card of the top 50 steady fics, top 49 steady fics that are on AO3 at the moment. They were organized by hits, so like which fics got the most eyeballs on it, essentially. If you want to know, for me personally, how I landed on the study board, I have read 31.5 of the 49 that were on the study board. But one of the things that was really interesting to me was that I wanted to see sort of what the stats around these particular fics looked like, if there was any sort of themes or trends. And I had some assumptions in my head when it came to like what would happen when it came to like how something became one of the top 50 steady fics, for instance. And some of those things were proved correct, and some of those things were different than what I thought they would be, but I did like a bunch of work to like actually look at the stats around this, and I wanted to share that with you guys. So, if you are interested, I also made a like sheet tracker for reading these if you would like. That even has like a little bar that fills up as you read the chapters for each of these fics, which I'll link down below. So if you want to like create a reading challenge around this bingo board and like try and fill it out, that's something that you can definitely do. Because I had already like input all of this information, it was really easy to make a tracker for reading them. And I myself might try and hit those handful more of the fics that I haven't read on this list within the next year, so you might hear me talk about this again later where I'm like, here's my wrap up of the ones that I was missing. So yes, yeah, there's a thing that you can use if you would like to down below, and then I will also link down below my sheets and graphs. If you want to do different stats around it, you can. I'll link that down below as well for the stuff that I'm going to talk about in a second, which is all of the stats and stuff so far. So the first thing that I looked at was obviously like the distribution of hits, and it looks like the author frequency, most of the authors only show up one time. There was also only one fic that was posted under anonymous, so either it was orphaned or it was posted anonymously, but everybody else has still linked to their names. There were 2 authors that had 3 fics that showed up, and a total of 7 authors that had more than one fic hit the list. The most popular one had over 600,000 hits, and then it ranges the gambit all the way down to like just over 100,000 hits when it comes to just like overall what is being seen on those top 50 fics. So I had assumed that there would be a higher percentage of these being mature and teen rated fics, because in general, when you think of like the most audience that it can reach, you would think that anything that was rated explicit that would have been denied to anybody underage would not be on this list as much, just because it is taking away a whole percentage of fic readers. That wasn't the case. More than half of these fics were explicit, which was interesting for me to see. I'm not super surprised, because it is like a very like popular fandom among adults more so than I think teens, but I think a lot of people when they think of Stranger Things think it's aimed very much at teens. So it's interesting for me to see this, that specifically Steady that pairing is more so consumed by adults, it would seem. The other thing that was interesting to me was that there were some fics that were marked incomplete or ongoing still. About 85%, a little under, the fics were completed, but some of them weren't, which is interesting to me. And it also will come up in a second when we talk about pub date. The vast majority of these were older fics, which makes sense to me because the longer that a fic has been on the platform, the more time it has to accumulate hits. What I wasn't expecting was that fully half of the fics in the top 50 list were from just the summer of 2022, which is when Stranger Things Season 4 came out. The vast majority of them came out in July of 2022, which is right after the second half of Season 4 came out, Volume 2 came out. But overall, fully half of these fics were posted just in the summer, June, July, and August of 2022. It's 2/3 of it was published just in the year 2022, and then everything else was published later. And that could include like chapters being published later, like those ongoing fics, because as you can sort of see the way that scatter graph is, even the ones that are like quite high in the rankings are older fics. Like, it's not necessarily ones that are still ongoing, that are still getting hits. A lot of the ones around the mid-range are showing up having still had chapters being posted more recently, but for the most part, everything is right around that July 2022 mark. You can see all of those dots that are all the way to the left of the graph there. So that's just something interesting, and it did align with what I thought was going to happen. I just didn't realize like to what extent it was going to be. Similarly, I thought that there was going to be a skew towards higher chapter count fics, because the more chapters it has, the more times people are going to click on your fic, especially if it's something that's ongoing. People are going to show up and click it again, which creates another hit. So there was definitely, you can see when you look at those bar graphs that it's leaning more towards the left. The higher ranks definitely do have more chapters. And on that same line, more chapters usually means more word count, but not necessarily. You can look at the word count to chapter count ratio when those bars show up half and half. It does seem like most of the fics are novel length or longer, like 50,000 words. Or more, which makes sense. A lot of fics are quite long, but I don't think it was exclusively length that really affected it as much. It definitely has an impact, but I don't think that it is fully the whole story when it comes to like why something has more hits than something else. Definitely more so it feels like if you were writing fics in the summer of 2022, you were getting those hits, which again makes sense. That's when the season came out. That's when the peak of popularity was. It would have been that summer. So most people were reading the fics there. At this point, several years on, it's just really diehard fans or people who are coming to the fandom later, versus the people who were there really during the like peak summer months. And again, I was one of those people that got into the fandom during the summer of 2022. TikTok was really pushing a lot of accounts where people were doing basically like recommendations for Steddie Fics at that time. So a lot of those fics that I remember seeing people talk about on TikTok were also on this top 50 list. Another thing that was just interesting to see was that kudos and bookmarks definitely have a trend towards the more popular having more, but it wasn't 100% the same. Like, there's definitely some like fics that are lower on the list that have more kudos or bookmarks than some fics that are higher on the list. I was only able to see, obviously, the bookmarks that aren't privated. So some of those fics higher on the list might be explicit or might be content like Omegaverse, which a lot of people will do a private bookmark with instead of a public bookmark, which I can't see. Only the author can kind of see which bookmarks are private versus public. But it's just interesting to see that while there is a trend of like more kudos the more people read, it isn't 100% like accurate. Like, if you're the number one fic, you don't have the number one kudos ranking or the number one bookmarks ranking. So yeah, I just want to say to folks who are on AO3, if you're reading an entire fic, you should be hitting kudos at least once, guys. Because it's like super nice to your authors. You don't have to bookmark every single fic. I personally bookmark every single fic because it's an easier way for me to see if it's something I've already read. Because when I click on a fic that somebody recommends, it'll tell me right at the top, like edit bookmark, which lets me know that I've already read this fic, because I don't always remember which fics I've read, simply because of the nature of fandom being so many fics sort of have the same premise. So just reading a description might not tell me enough, or even the author, because I will read several fics from the same author. I'm like, have I read this one before? Have I not? It's very rare that I've read like every single fic from a specific author. So it's helpful for me to know whether I've read something before or not without having to get like halfway through and be like, wow, I really feel like I've read this, because I have. So that's helpful. But I leave kudos on every single fic that I look at, just because these authors are doing this for free. And that feels like my sort of like, thank you for putting all this time and energy into something that I get to consume and enjoy just for free. It's just something I get to have. So yes, all of these things, super helpful. It was very interesting for me to look at. And again, if you would like to, I have that tracker. You can go and read these. You can go and see which ones you would like to try if you haven't already. If you weren't part of the fandom way back when, you may not have heard of some of these because the discourse has sort of moved away from a lot of them. And if you are OG back to that time, like, how many of these have you read? I would super love to see. I will again link my Blue Sky down below, where you can find the blank bingo card to fill out for yourself. And again, most, if not all of these are really great fics that I would highly recommend you checking out. Obviously, I haven't read all of them, so I can't speak for the ones I haven't read, but I don't think there's one on there that I would say isn't worth reading. Like, there's a reason all of these fics have as many hits as they do. Highly recommend checking any of them out. And there are links directly to them in my spreadsheet. So if you're like, oh, that one sounds really interesting, there's a link right there for you to click and read if you so choose. So yeah, I hope this was interesting for you. It was interesting for me. Some of my preconceived notions of like what I thought made sense and were accurate, that older fics obviously were showing up. Fics with more chapters were obviously showing up. But there were some fics that I thought would be on here that weren't. Which is interesting to me. And I also feel like I would like to look at data of like most bookmarked, most kudos fics on top of just hits, because there is this skew that I knew was going to show up when it comes to like older fics, or when it comes to longer fics, that those would be skewed in this data because of the way that just looking at hits as a marker of the most popular, that doesn't necessarily make it the best, quote unquote. So if there are some fics that didn't show up on this list and you're a steady person that you think either should be on the list or that you think other people should read, I highly recommend leaving a comment down below, because I am always looking for more steady fics to read. I am reading them all the time, even still now, going on almost 3 years at this point after the fact. But yes, yeah, I would love to talk to people about these. Like, what were your favorite steady fics, or maybe what were your favorite like OG classic steady fics from back in 2022, summer of 2022. I hope this was interesting for you guys, and I will talk to you again next week about something else, probably books next week, because we did fan fiction this week, and I can't do fan fiction every single week, even though I spend all of my time reading it. I will talk to you again soon. Bye.